this lesson, you are going to learn about 3 past tenses: the past simple, the past continuous, and the past with used to, and about the question words when, why, and who. We are going to study the past simple tense first. It can be used to describe a completed action, situation, or event either in the recent or in the distant past. For the verb to be, there are 2 different past simple forms. Was is used with I, he, she, it. Were is used with we, you, they. To form the negative, add not after was or were. The contracted forms are wasn't, weren't. The affirmative of to be is I was, you were, he was, she was, it was, we were, you were, they were. And the negative is I was not, I wasn't, you were not, you weren't, he was not, he wasn't, she was not, she wasn't, it was not, it wasn't, we were not, we weren't, you were not, you weren't, they were not, they weren't. To form questions, place the correct form of the verb was or were before the subject. Was I? Were you? Was he? Was she? Was it? Were we? Were you? Were they? Affirmative short answers use was, were. Yes, I was. Yes, you were. Yes, he was. Yes, she was. Yes, it was. Yes, we were. Yes, you were. Yes, they were. Negative short answers use wasn't, weren't. No, I wasn't. No, you weren't. No, he wasn't. No, she wasn't. No, we weren't. No, you weren't. No, they weren't. There can be used as a subject. There was for c'era. There were for c'erano. Here are some sentences using was, wasn't. Note that the contracted negative form is always pronounced wasn't. Instead, the strong form was is used in short answers and can be used in questions, while the weak form was is normally used in affirmative sentences and can be used in questions. Was it hot in London yesterday? Was it hot in London yesterday? Yes, it was. No, it wasn't. Richard the Lion-Hearted was King of England from 1189 to 1199. John wasn't at home when I telephoned a few minutes ago. This is also true for the pronunciation of were, weren't. The negative contracted form is always pronounced weren't. The strong form were is used only in questions and in short answers. The weak form were can be used in questions and is normally used in affirmative sentences. Were they home when you telephoned? Were they home when you telephoned? Yes, they were. No, they weren't. There were terrible snowstorms in New York in 1888. People were afraid of cats during the Middle Ages. The Smiths weren't at the party on Saturday. Now, we are going to look at the past simple tense of other verbs. Remember, we use the past simple when describing a completed action, situation, or event, and we use it both for the recent past and the distant past. The verb to be has two past forms. Other verbs have only one. For regular verbs, the past simple is formed by adding ed to the base verb. The past simple is invariable. For work, it is worked. I worked. You worked. He worked. She worked. It worked. We worked. You worked. They worked. One point that is extremely important to remember is not to use auxiliaries in past simple affirmative sentences. This means you cannot translate from Italian, where essere and avere are often used. You must use the past simple form immediately after the subject. Sono stato a Londra per 2 mesi quando avevo 19 anni is I stayed in London for 2 months when I was 19. Ho lavorato in un ristorante l'anno scorso is I worked in a restaurant last year. To be, which you've just studied, and can, and other modal verbs, which will be studied further on, do not require an auxiliary to form negative and interrogative sentences, but all other verbs do. To form negative and interrogative sentences in the past simple, we use the auxiliary did. This is really very simple, as did is invariable. In the negative, we use did plus not, or in the contracted form, didn't, before the base verb without ed. I did not work. I didn't work. You did not work. You didn't work. He did not work. He didn't work. She did not work. She didn't work. It did not work. It didn't work. We did not work. We didn't work. You did not work. You didn't work. They did not work. They didn't work. In questions, we place did before the base verb without ed. Did I work? Did you work? Did he work? Did she work? Did it work? Did we work? Did you work? Did they work? Affirmative short answers are formed with a subject pronoun plus did. Yes, I did. Yes, you did. Yes, he did, etc. Negative short answers are formed with subject pronoun plus didn't. No, I didn't. No, you didn't. No, he didn't, etc. We're now going to study spelling changes in the written forms of the past simple tense and the rules about how to pronounce the past simple tense of verbs. First, spelling changes. To regular verbs which end in silent E, simply add D. Hope, hoped. Situate, situated. Change, changed. Die, died. When a regular verb ends in a single consonant preceded by a single vowel, we double the consonant before adding ed. Stop, stopped. Tin, tinned. When a regular verb ends in y preceded by a consonant, y is changed to I before adding ed. Study, studied. Marry, married. This is not the case when a regular verb ends in y preceded by a vowel, when you simply add ed. Enjoy, enjoyed. Stay, stayed. How the ed ending is pronounced depends on the different ways verbs end. With verbs that end in t or d, it is pronounced as a separate unstressed syllable, id. Wanted, needed, started, ended. With verbs that end in an unvoiced consonant sound, it is not a separate syllable and is pronounced. Examples are hoped, panicked, coughed, missed, wished, bathed, watched. With verbs that end in other consonant sounds and in vowel sounds, it is not a separate syllable and is pronounced d. Robbed, hugged, managed, travelled, served, borrowed, married. What comes naturally to Italian speakers is to always pronounce it as a separate syllable, and this is wrong. Married is a mistake. Married is correct. Hoped is a mistake. Hoped is correct. And you must remember to say id. The ed ending is never pronounced ed. Painted is a mistake. Painted is correct. And then, of course, there are irregular verbs. You'll have to learn the past simple form of each irregular verb you need to use, and it probably won't be simple. Become, became. Begin, began. Go, went. Have, had. Teach, taught. Write, wrote. And many, many more. Nobody loves irregular verbs, but there's very little we can do about them. Here are some time expressions that are frequently used with the past simple tense. Yesterday, yesterday morning, afternoon, evening. Last night, last Saturday, last month. A week ago, 100 years ago. A long time ago, many years ago. A short time ago, a little while ago. Note that prepositions are not used with these expressions. I saw Jim yesterday morning. I didn't go to Liam's party last Saturday. I finished school a long time ago. These expressions are almost always placed at the end of a sentence. They are placed at the beginning of a sentence only for special emphasis. Before studying the other past tenses, we are going to see how to describe ability in the past using could, which is the past of can, and using was, were able to, or managed to. Could is not only the past of can, it has other meanings, but we are not going to study these meanings now. Could and the negative, could not, whose contracted form is couldn't, are invariable. The auxiliary did is not used, and questions are formed by placing could before the subject. Here are some examples. Could you swim when you were 5? I could swim when I was 4. Note that here we are describing general ability, the ability to do something at any time. We are not describing particular ability, the ability to do something on one occasion. In past tense affirmative sentences and in questions asking about a particular occasion, when someone actually did something, we do not use could. We use was, were able to. Were you able to do the shopping? Yes, the supermarket was open, so I was able to get the eggs. It is also possible to use manage to. Did you manage to phone? Yes, I found his number, so I managed to phone. Compare the following sentences. When we are describing general ability in the past, we use could. Roger Bannister could run very fast. When we mean that someone actually did something, we cannot use could. Roger Bannister was the first person who was able to break the 4-minute mile. Roger Bannister was the first person who managed to break the 4-minute mile. In these sentences, the use of could is a mistake. If you use could for particular ability in the past, you will confuse the person you are speaking or writing to. But in negative sentences, could not and wasn't, weren't able to can both be used for particular ability. I couldn't phone you because I didn't have your number. I wasn't able to phone you because I couldn't find your number. You have seen that can is used in the present with verbs of perception to indicate that the experience is occurring at the moment of speaking. For the past, could or couldn't are used. I was sure he was at home. I could hear the television. It was foggy. I couldn't see anything. I could smell smoke. Let's look now at two other past tenses. The past continuous tense, also called the past progressive tense, is formed using was with I, he, she, it. Were with we, you, they, with the base verb plus the ing participle. In negative sentences, not follows was or were, and questions are formed by placing was, were before the subject. The affirmative past continuous is I was working, he was working, she was working, it was working, we were working, you were working, they were working. The negative is I was not working. I wasn't working. He, she, it was not working. He, she, it wasn't working. We, you, they were not working. We, you, they weren't working. The interrogative is: was I working? Was he, she, it working? Were we, you, they working? Affirmative short answers use was, were. Yes, I was. Yes, he, she, it was. Yes, we, you, they were. Negative short answers use wasn't, weren't. No, I wasn't. No, he, she, it wasn't. No, we, you, they weren't. This tense is used to describe past activities that are seen as temporary. In 1983, I was studying in London. What were you studying? It is also used for activities that were occurring at the past moment being described. It was late. I was sitting in the kitchen. I was tired, but I was thinking about the day's events. The past continuous is often used to describe an activity or situation happening when a single action or event occurred. In this case, when, meaning quando, is used with the single action. What were you doing when you met your husband? It was raining when I got up this morning. While, meaning mentre, is used with the activity or situation. I met him while I was spending the summer in France. While I was going to work this morning, it started to rain. Examples of questions and short answers are: was it raining when you left for work? Yes, it was. Were you working at the time? No, I wasn't. Verbs which are not used in the continuous form are not usually used with the past continuous, with the exceptions you have studied. You cannot say, I was having a telephone, but you can say, the phone rang while I was having a shower. There is another past tense, the past with used to. The structure used to plus base verb refers to habits and states that existed only in the past and no longer exist now. It cannot be used for specific actions or events. You cannot say, I used to see John yesterday. It used to snow a lot last winter. Used to is invariable. I used to live in the country when I was a child. We used to have a horse. There used to be a chestnut tree near the house. The negative is did not used to. The contracted form didn't used to is normally used. I didn't used to like broccoli. Questions are formed by placing did before the subject and used to. Where did you used to live? What kind of music did you used to like? Frequency adverbs generally go before used to. We never used to watch television. I sometimes used to play cards with my grandparents. We use used to when what we want to emphasize is that an action or situation existed for an extended period of time in the past. You can use the past simple instead, but it is common to use used to. It is important to remember that there is no form used to for habitual present actions. For the present, you must use the present simple tense. I live in the country. I have a horse. I don't like broccoli. Now, I'd like to present some new question words. Quando is when. When did you leave school? When did you used to study? Perché is why in questions. Why did you move to Rome? Why were you looking for me? Why did he used to be afraid of dogs? In statements, both affirmative and negative, we use because. We moved to Rome because my father worked there. I was looking for you because I didn't have the key. If you are answering a question, you can also say, because my father worked there. Because I didn't have the key. However, use why in sentences that begin like these. I wonder why he was afraid of dogs. I don't know why he was afraid of dogs. Chi is who. Who did you see yesterday? Who were you talking to on the phone just now? Who did you used to look like? Your father or your mother? Notice that in these three examples, who and the subject of the sentence are not the same. When who is the subject, the auxiliaries do, does, did are not used in questions. Who saw you yesterday? Who was talking to you just now? Who used to take you to school? Your father or your mother? That is the end of lesson 6. Now you can do the exercises on the grammar points presented in this unit.